Welcome back to OpenLine. We are talking about college. More and more high school students want to go to college. More and more are making plans to go to college. But a large number of those who say they're going to go to college do not finish college, have not gotten their degree 6 years later. A new report's out that is discussing why that is happening. Happy to have with us Bob Obrahta, the Executive Director of Tennessee College Access and Success Network, and Jennifer Hill with the Nashville Education Foundation. And there are lots of things to get into. I want to start loan aversion. Okay. So some kids, I don't blame them. Right. So they're scared of loans. Right. Is that right? They don't want to take out any sort of loan.
None whatsoever.
And I understand that.
Right.
So how does that play into this?
So sometimes you have students who will get accepted to a four-year college or university like an MTSU or an Austin P, and they're thinking that they're going to go to that school and start in the fall, and then they get their financial aid award, and they realize that within their financial aid award that's some of that aid is in the form of loan. Now many of us have gone through college and had to take out student loans, and so we understand that you have to pay them back at some point, but what we're finding is that students in metro schools were not willing to take out any loan whatsoever. So it was just totally against their nature to want to take out any loan, and so what happens is that they would then choose to redirect where they were attending school. Most typically then what they would end up doing is going to a community college. And so the question becomes, when is a loan an investment in somebody's future to go to a school that might be the best fit for them, versus when is a loan taking out too much and getting in over your head. And so there's a lot of need for financial literacy training with students.
And what do you think? I mean, I guess some of these loans, yeah, when you're graduating with $100,000 or more debt, that is a big problem. Right. But I guess we want to get across to students a little bit of debt might be an investment. Is that right? So it's kind of a fine line, or what do you think?
Yeah, I think it is definitely a fine line, and I think it goes back to starting to have these types of conversations very early and having them be family-based conversations. So some of our students are actually navigating the college process solo because there's not a college role model or in their family or in their life. And so if we can create a citywide college-going culture around what it means to go to college, what the options are to go to college, and start those conversations in middle school so families are really having time to plan and explore all kinds of options, I think we'll see a different outcome than what we're seeing right now.
One of the things when I talk to students we discuss is that for every $10,000 of loan that you take out, you're looking at roughly $120 a month payment over a 10-year period of time. That's the cost. And so the question becomes that if you can go through and get a bachelor's degree and you can come out on the other end and you're making $40,000 a year, let's say, can you pay $120 a month if it costs you $10,000 in loan? And the answer is quite often is yes, of course, obviously I could. So you have to kind of put it into a framework of is this an investment then? Because if you don't have that degree, you can't get that $40,000 a year job.
And is that being talked about in schools now, or are you saying it should be talked about?
It is being talked about. It needs to be talked about more.
It needs to be contextualized.
It needs to be contextualized. It needs to be talked about earlier. I think it needs to be talked about more to parents as well, so that they clearly understand what we're talking about. Because it's just so important right now to have a degree, and the higher, a bachelor's degree even versus a community college degree, there's a vast difference in the types of salaries and employment opportunities that you have.
Let's go to Raymond. Hello, Raymond. Raymond, are you there?
Yeah.
Go right ahead. What's on your mind?
I can tell you from experience why that children have a problem with completing college. The main reason is they come out of high school, and when they go into college, the colleges require them to take a bunch of courses that should have been taught in high school and were taught in high school, but they still have to take these extra courses before they can take the courses that pertain to their degree. I sent three children to college. And all three of them, what made it cost me so much money was that, and discouraged me so, and them too, was they take about 2-year courses of things that didn't pertain to the degree they were studying for, and was costing tons of money and taking up time. And the classes, to get in some of the classes, was filled up with foreign students. And they'd have to wait till those classes become available, and then they'd want them to take other courses that were just costing tons of money.
What college were they going to? What colleges?
Lipscomb was one of them. And the problem with it was, we sent them to the community colleges to start with, and the community colleges were the same way. And then when they got in Lipscomb, they wanted them to take these other courses. And it wasn't the point of the money, it was the point of the time and the discouragement to the children from not being able to take the courses that they needed to take that pertained to their degree.
All right.
And it discouraged children to go to college. And I wouldn't recommend any boy to go to college if he's got some common sense, to go to work and get out here and make a living, rather than waste his time and money and come out of college with a deep debt that he can't pay.
All right, well, let's talk about everything you're saying. I appreciate your call, Raymond. Thank you. All right, so clearly he's had a frustrating experience, and he feels like he was paying for stuff that I guess he didn't feel like he needed, and that those costs just kept compounding, and so you hear what he's saying there. What do you think?
So one thing is, in terms of how long it takes sometimes to get a degree now. Again, looking back into our mirrors of when we were younger, you know, when we talk about 4-year degrees, it used to take 4 years to get a degree. Well, the average time it takes now, if you're looking at a public university, college or university, is 5.5. And so there's the additional expenses, there's the additional tuition and room and board. That's another 1.5 years where a student is not out in the workforce working and is accumulating more and more debt. So from that perspective, Raymond's, you know, I understand that, especially if you're going from from a Lipscomb University to a community college and then maybe back. What Raymond is describing are pathways. And if you do not have the correct pathway set up, you have a situation where a student is taking a number of classes that might not either transfer to the 4-year institution or might not specifically be used as credit for a particular major. And that's something that the state has worked really hard on to try to simplify those pathways so that students like Raymond's children don't end up in that situation. The other thing that is going on, and I'll let you speak to this, Jennifer, is dual enrollment and other kinds of ways to kind of, for students to get credit earlier before they end up in this situation.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the big findings in the report is just affordability is a really large concern in general. It is for every family regardless. And so we looked at ways in which we can leverage Tennessee state policy to drive down a cost of attending post-secondary institutions. And one strategy that it has a really great foundation in Metro Nashville Public Schools is dual credit courses. And so the ability to take a course in high school but receive college credit for it, and there's many different pathways to be able to do that, but we see that as a strategy to help the situation like what Raymond and his children experienced.
But one thing I would say to Raymond is that, and, you know, as we're looking at students who are coming out of high school now, the high school degree is just not enough. And I don't care.
He was saying I would recommend they not go to college, and you hear that sometimes. But so, yeah, I wanted to ask you to push back on that.
Yeah, you can, I mean, obviously, I mean, if you wanted to walk out and go into a job, you know, you're making $13 an hour. If you wanted to go become a package delivery person for any one of a number of companies that are here that, you know, do that work. We've had some announcements recently about that. You can do that, but if you're looking to go beyond that, you need something. Some type of certification, whether it's through a certification through the TCAPs, whether it's a 2-year degree, Clearly, there's a big leap when you get to a 4-year degree in terms of the opportunities that are available. And otherwise, what happens is that you hit the ceiling really quick. And so that becomes something where you see a lot of students right now, especially adults. I mean, and Governor Haslam has even laid out an entire statewide plan called Tennessee Reconnect, which is designed to get students that are of adult age back into higher education.
And I would also just kind of totally agree with what Bob is saying, and I wonder if Raymond's children might have benefited from some other type of college other than a 4-year college. And we talk a lot about post-secondary is really an industry certification. It's a 2-year degree. It's a 4-year degree. He left the impression that maybe they already knew exactly what they wanted to do, and so maybe that route they would have had a different set of experiences.
And you said that the average now is 5.5 years, whereas before it was 4.
Right.
So yeah, it was 4 when I went through. Why is it 5.5 years now?
Cost, number one. People are doing what we call stopping out. So they will work for they'll work for a semester, they'll earn money so that they can then go back to school and they can get their their tuition covered because maybe they had a bill from their previous semester that they still needed to cover before they could take new classes. That's a big one. Obviously, it's the affordability. Sometimes it's the class sizes. I think that even Raymond referred to that too. I mean, if you end up in an intro to biology class at a public college or university, you're going to probably have over 100 people who are in that class, and maybe it's only being offered once a semester. And if that's the class that you need and you could not get into it, now you have to wait until it comes back around again. So there's barriers like that are really coming into play.
What did you find? All right, so this was a study of metro schools, right? Metro kids. The average salary that parents were making, what are we talking about here, and what role did that play?
Sure.
No, it's
you want me to start? Okay.
Yeah.
So
you're good at the financials.
So if you are looking at all the students from that class, class of 2016 we're talking about.
Okay.
And we're going to be doing a follow-up study to look at upcoming class years, but there's about 80% of all the students that are filling out a financial aid form are coming from incomes of $65,000 or less in the family. That's a family size of 3.
Okay.
And the majority of those are even $55,000 or less, you could even say. So what we call Pell eligible. In other words, their income is such that they would be eligible for at least some amount of Pell Grant funding from the federal government.
And how many had parents who went to college? Do we know that? Like, how many would this be their first time?
There's not
a good indicator. Exactly.
We don't track it. But I mean, I would, if I'm guessing, 75% to 80% of the students are probably first generation low income.
So 65,000, family of 3, there's not a lot of room there for any sort of problem. Right. You know, a car breaks down or something like that. There's just not a lot of room there. And that's really getting at the essence, really, of what we're talking about.
And for a family of 3, that may be the college student being one of the income earners.
Right.
And you know, Bob alluded to the fact that we estimated about 90% of Nashville State students are working more than 30 hours a week. So any type of disruption to that family income is going to put a hardship on a student's pathway.
And when you look at the students who are attending Nashville State, then we go into even a different category where you're talking about a large percentage of the students who are low income, where they're, we're $24,000 salaries or less from the family. And so, they're in, desperate situations just trying to maintain a standard, some type of standard of living. So there's food insecurity issues, for example, that happen quite often for students on Nashville State's campus. And so if you're at this point where it's like a choice of, am I going to eat, or am I going to, use the funds that I have to buy books? Well, that becomes the situation where you see a lot of students fall out.
And it would be easy to go for that $13 an hour job that's immediate money, as opposed to the promise of a future job that would be a higher salary. And so, yeah, that's what we're up against.
Right. And so what ends up happening is that what we call year 1 to year 2 persistence rate. Remember, we started with 61% of the students. Well, after that first year, you have less than half of a whole graduating class that's still in college. There's only about 47, 48% of those students now after the first year that are still enrolled in some form of post-secondary education because they've fallen out. And then as you go on, the second year and the third year, that number becomes smaller and smaller. So what ends up happening is that after a 6-year period of time, which is how we measure completion rates in higher education, you end up with 24% of an entire graduating class that has some college or degree. So, and 20% of that is 4-year degrees, and 4% of that is 2-year degrees.
Wow. So at least the desire is there. At least kids want to go.
Absolutely.
Now we just have to help them get through the process better.
Right.
We've identified, I feel like we've kind of turned the corner. More kids want to go than ever before.
Yep.
And it's and there are fewer barriers in some ways with Tennessee Promise and that kind of thing.
Right.
But there are other things that you've identified in this report that we need to deal with. Now we're going to take a break. If you want to call in, there's the number 615-737-PLUS, 615-737-7587. Take a break. Be back right after this.